Right, I had to, it was okay when I started off, and I promised myself I was going to just tell the truth. I wasn't going to do anything more. And then came the point where, because it's mainly about, it's about my marriage, basically, and it came to the point where there were some difficult times, and where I thought, maybe I should leave it out, and then I thought I can't leave bits out, because if I leave bits out, I'm not telling the truth. I'm censoring it. So that was hard. There were some very hard parts to write, which I really had trouble doing. And I have to say, Mark was fairly firm with me about that.
I think I might have said something like, writing for poets and memoirists is always hardest for those closest to us. It's also loveliest for them sometimes, but in the end, we don't write for them, or not just for them. That's an important thing to remember. Like if Leonard Cohen had never disappointed some women, we wouldn't have the songs. You know, that's what Joan Didion means in a way. There's a kind of, I'm a lapsed lawyer, so I sometimes think of it this way. Writers have duties of care, and they're incompatible. They're just incompatible. And you have to settle yourself on which ones you're going to serve. They're, you know, duties to language, they're duties to history, duties to yourself, duties to your parents, your kids, people you've never met, who actually that's where you owe most of the obligations. Because people you never will meet are the ones who will encounter the work and find it transformative or interesting, and they're not interested in making the same kind of judgments that we tend to make in our families, etc. So it's a tough space. Everyone who's written in memoir, that's why Joan Didion said what she said, has had to make those tough decisions. But you made them well, and guided by love. That's the thing. Love guides. I know it's an old-fashioned thing to say, but and love meaning agape, you know, love of what's true, love of human nature, beyond other areas of love which are to do with fidelity and filial. I'm on top of this because we've just had Valentine's week, right? And we poets, some of us were conscripted to speak on different aspects of Greek understandings of love, and it's multiple. My love poems this time were about my mother and my father and landscape and so on, because love is very big. There are things that count, that it hurts sometimes people close to us to hear said, but nonetheless, everyone probably having a good moment would say it's well that those things have been said, because they're truthful things. And it's hard work, isn't it, to make that judgment? You think about what your kids are going to think, you're thinking about what the critics are going to say, and you've just got to go. One of my writing tips, I don't know if this helps you, Trish, but I tend to say, write as if you're talking with someone you love about something you know. And if you write that way, it can help push back the anxieties and the way that we get over anxious about what people are going to think in the short term. This friend of mine said to me the other day, we tend to privilege the present, don't we? It's a human condition. We privilege this moment. But this, in 10 years' time, this will be a moment 10 years ago, and it won't be of the same potency. So writers are often writing with our minds thrown way out there, way back into the past, way forward into the future, while also, of course, giving consideration to things in the immediate past or the present moment. It's complicated business, isn't it? And simple Hemingway-esque sentences help you through. What did you ever learn, Mr. Hemingway, from journalism school? You said how to write a simple declarative sentence. Yeah, write words for the right thing without getting too preoccupied with the things we think we're meant to say in the words we think we're meant to say them in. And that, of course, you have to bear some thought, put some thought in that area, but just learning to trust the process where the right word comes for the right thing and getting it said and pushing back against all of the bad advice that you hear in your head. Don't say that, you can't say that all the time. So this is not popular, you're white, this is cultural appropriation, all these kind of other things that you have to bear some consideration for. But in the end, each of us lives only one life, and it's a complicated life, and We got here through very diverse and complex processes that no one else should be allowed to diminish or reduce to one simple form. They're complicated. You know, you get here through a hell of a long process, Trish, and so do I. And it's been all over the world and inside and out. And you have to do some justice to that as well.
And I do. The main thing I can remember Mark saying with some of these difficult parts, and he said, look, you've written it well and you've written it with love, and that's what counts.
As a follow-up to that, Trish, did any of your close family read any of the drafts? Did you allow them to?
I would have allowed them to, but no one wanted to.
This is a common experience for writers, I have to tell you. Like you imagine, I've written all books, no one in my life, I think they love me, some of the people in my life, but I don't know, you're not the writer to your closest kids. You're a mother and a father and a mother and a child, and so it's a bit of a weird thing to say, oh, here's my book, tell me what you think of it.
Okay,
Yes.
I get that. It's a frightening thing to show.
Yeah, that's true too. Yeah, we feel very vulnerable, I think, people around writers.
Yes, people didn't mind, I mean the family, the kids. Well, way back when I was writing, that's what Mum did.
Yes,
And it was my recreation.
Yes, okay.
And I don't think they really were that interested in what I actually was writing.
That's right. Watch out.
But,
If somebody in your family starts writing, stop them. Step in. You can't just let it happen.
Can I ask a question? Just about the Japanese culture.
yeah.
What did you learn, obviously with your proximity to the culture as a Western person? What did you learn that you could say to other Westerners that may not have the insights that you have into to the culture itself by your experience?
That's
Huge.
huge.
Like
I
something
think
that you would not know having been on that journey.
and I think that it's probably impossible to get those insights without living through that. I know a lot of people Westerners who have spent many years in Japan as as diplomats or as parts of their family or whatever. But I think all the time they're looking at it from the outside. So I wouldn't go so far as to say I recommend that anyone does what I did, because once I married a Japanese man, and then I was determined to learn the language and to learn the culture and to I couldn't take it to the full extent that I initially thought I would. But I do think I have an understanding of the culture. I don't know, my children might disagree with me.
Can I add this, Trish? Some things, as Trish says, I think can only be learned experientially, can't they? But other things are learned best through story, not through moral, but through story. And actually, you could listen to that prose poem on your father-in-law. And though Trish has drawn no lessons out overtly, you learn so much about cultural difference there, don't you? Because of how well the story is told. You know, you think of the cranes and the 2 a.m. and you go, that must have been annoying, but isn't that beautiful? And the complexity, this is why we need literature, of course, because poems and stories and memoir get moral lessons taught without teaching them, or cultural insights largely done without reducing them, as we have to do in other discourses. But we as humans need to learn some things in some certain ways. Some we have to learn from our parents, others we have to learn by falling and failing and experience, and others through literature. It's why we need it. That form of expression that's not reducible to thesis statements and summaries of the news, but to here's a story, let me tell you a story. Something is learned in that way that can't be learned in another way. So Trish has practiced that. Great question.
I think my children have probably had a much tougher foot in each world, really. There is a poem I've written about that, which is not in the book, because I wrote it after the book.
Good poem, I know it.
So why have you had your launch here? What's your connection with
Oh,
Lacandon?
yeah, that's a good question.
We were living on 5 acres at Moralia.
Miranda.
Yes, and
I was
we.
from Windsor.
Oh,
There
wow.
you go.
So, there was absolutely no public transport where we were. I think there was a bus in the morning that went to Riverston Station, and another bus in the morning that went to Round Corner for the school children, and there was one in the late afternoon returning for them. Other than that, you had to drive. And I wanted to move somewhere. Well, actually what happened was I had a seizure out of the blue, and that was fine. I lived through that one, and I lived through begging people to take me places and finding out that they were quite willing, like family members, they were quite willing to take me anywhere as long as it was on the way to where they were going, which didn't always work. And then 5 years after that, I had another one. I announced very loudly that we had to sell a place and move somewhere where there was public transport. In my mind, I thought we might move to Richmond or Kenthurst. But I have 2 sons. One lives at Beverly Hills and the other one lives in Haberfield. And my husband was very keen to move somewhere close to the city because he had a restaurant in the city, in Darlinghurst. So I lost that battle and we moved to Punchbowl. And I don't know what I was going to say.
So
That's why you chose
Oh,
this
that's
library.
right, yes. Yeah, oh, then, so, it was very hard. We moved in the middle of lockdown, and then for a couple of months I really did nothing because I was too scared to speak to anybody, because we had that, what was her name, Dr. Chant?
Kerry
Coming on every day telling you that everybody in the street that you were passing probably had COVID and you really had to be careful. And so I would talk to people over the back fence, but I didn't really get to know anybody. And then I found the library. I can't remember why I first came here, but Sarah's has done wonderful things with this library, and they have so much going on. So I joined the book club group, and then from the book club group I discovered there's a knitting group, and I joined the knitting group. And then it was just lovely, and then Sarah's has after school things, and then she got people from the council who do gardening and plant growing and nature care to come in and do things with the school kids on their way home from school. And it was just, that saved me. It saved my sanity. And there are some friends here today from the book club and knitting, maybe. Yes, there they are. And book club. And it's just, and they're just a lovely group of women that have been really supportive and have lived here all their lives, but can understand how I feel too.
That's a great question, because listen to all that elicited from you about the journey, and also the thank you for the library and why we need them so much.
No, it's really good. If I may just say that book club and knitting groups and other groups is just a vehicle for us to grow in the library and to integrate and to assist each other. Just listen to everyone talking, and it's that's why libraries are here to stay. We do a lot for the community and its groups, and look, Trish has achieved such a wonderful thing. Writing a book is no mean task. It's a really big big thing to do. And she used to talk to me about, you know, how she's going about it, and we all encouraged her, and look, she's achieved such a wonderful thing. So all I can say is that these groups are really integral to what we do and communities involvement. So yeah, it's lovely. It's
They
good to
have
know.
Sarah's as organisers too, all the talks. So there was one, I was just finishing the book, it was being edited, and I was going through the process of getting the edits back and putting them in, making sure they were going in the right way. It wasn't quite with the publisher yet at that stage. And Sarah's got someone in to do an author talk, and that inspired me, and she was so inspiring, wasn't she, Jackie?
Jackie, really,
Yes, and then she said to me, "No, hang in there, you're nearly finished, you're going to get there." And I thought, wow, she knows what she's talking about, yes.
I think one word, Mark, that you've not used about Trish, that several of us here in the room have known Trish for 70 years, because we almost started school together all those years ago. And one word that you haven't used is courageous. Trish's life has been courageous beyond belief, and we all know that because we've been a lot of steps over many, many years with Trish, and it hasn't all been easy. And we're very aware of that, and we're very, very proud of you, Trish. Absolutely.
Thank you. They've all been you're all a wonderful support to me.
That's what we need.
Courage is a great word. I did use it.
I'm sorry.
But I used it partly deliberately too, because, you know, it's connected to the heart.
Yes.
It's about the heart. And of course it takes more than, we say tika and so on, but it's always to do with that, you know. Courage of the right kind is an act of love, actually, and faith and trust in yourself and others. But yeah, thank you. I'm reminding you that's close to the heart of my understanding. Thanks, Trish.
And we did have a Jack Russell dog at one stage when we were living at Clara, because we were looking for a small dog because the two bottom children were quite ill. And if you want to see courage, you just need to look at a Jack Russell. Really,
And determination.
Yes, and determination.
Oh.
When we moved, she would go off with the what was he? He was a cattle dog, part cattle dog from next door, and the grass was about this long, and the cattle dog would go galloping off down the back of the thing, and so would Lil, the Jack Russell, but she couldn't see where she was. She couldn't see, but the grass would be going like this where she was, and then every now and then she'd leap up vertically, make sure she was still on the right track. And then she used to go in, a little bit later on, she'd go into my next door neighbour, who always had morning tea on her veranda, and she always had biscuits that she shared with Lil. And there was a German Shepherd up